Hi, this is Neil from CAD Pro Systems. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes just to demonstrate some of the transmission calculators that are built into Inventor. I've got a tutorial set of data here to help me go through this process. This data is built into Inventor as well, so you can find these tutorials and work through these examples yourself. So as you can see, I've got an assembly file open at the moment. My intention here is to add a shaft to this gearbox. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go to the Design tab. I'll click on the shaft icon, which starts the shaft calculator. The first shaft that I'm going to add to this design is a shaft based on an already existing template. If you have shaft shapes that you design and reuse again and again, you can create you can create a template and use that template to create these shafts really quickly. So I'm going to click on the open button, and there's the template file. I'm going to click on OK, which is just down here, and you'll see the shaft populate the design. There it is there. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to place this object into the assembly using some of these placement tools. If I hover my cursor over these icons, you can see a little tool tip pop open, just giving us a bit of a description as to what this tool does. So this first one gives us an opportunity to align the cylindrical surfaces. So I'm going to choose this tool, and I'm going to select this cylindrical surface. Then I move on to the next tool, where the tooltip asks me to align the planar end of the axis. I'm going to the planar end of the axle. I'm going to align it with this surface here. And then the last tool requires me to choose a surface which is kind of perpendicular to the axis. Aligned to the axis. So I'm going to choose this surface here. And as you can see, the axle fits into place. It's not quite right, because if we look at this from a kind of front view, this portion of the axle needs to be more central to the gearbox. So I'm just going to zoom in to this double-headed arrow and double click on it and enter an offset of -41. When I click on the tick, you can see how the axle kind of shifts into position like so. I'm going to click OK and just accept the file naming that Inventor suggests, and OK that. And there's the first axle in this design. Next, I'm going to create a second shaft. So again, I'm going to go to the Design tab, click on the Shaft tool, and Inventor remembers the last shaft that was created, which is why we've got a copy of the last shaft or axle populating my cursor. This is not what I want, so I'm going to go to the tool, and as you can see, each of the sections that make up the axle are addressed in this list, and features that you want to populate each section are available under the heading here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on here, and under section I'm going to delete all of these sections. That'll give me an opportunity to create a new shaft from scratch. So the last section that I'll be left with is this little cylindrical shape. There is a retaining ring feature on here, and I'm going to select that and see if I can delete that as well. So it's just a simple cylindrical section. Once I've got that, that's the beginnings of my next shaft or my next axle. But what I'll do next is I'll position it into the assembly using these same tools. So you can see the beginnings of the new shaft is in place. I've just got to just double click that positioning arrow and offset the position here by a value of 3.7 and OK that. That's the beginnings of my next shaft. I'm going to OK that and OK to accept the file naming. The next task is to populate the new shaft with all the features that are desired. So again, this time I'm going to right click on shaft number 2 and edit using the design accelerator. It's going to bring back that shaft component generator tool that we saw previously. So this first section, I don't need to do anything with that at the moment. But what I need to do is I need to add another cylindrical section to this shaft. So I'm going to click on this tool, insert cylinder. And as you can see, another section has been added. It's a little bit tricky to see in the display, but there it is. And for this one, I want to change the size from 17 by 12. So I'm going to double click on that size and it exposes the diameter and length. This diameter I'm going to change to 32 and this length I'm going to change to 9 and OK that. You can see the shaft is starting to develop. The next cylinder is going to be a value or a size 63 by 30. And OK that. Then another cylindrical shape. This time this is going to be a diameter of 28 and a length of 16. And OK that. Another cylindrical shape, this time a diameter of 20 and a length 65. OK that. And then I'm going to OK to finish that task. As you can see, that shaft is starting to develop in size and shape. In this next section, I'm going to add some features to shaft number 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit shaft number 2 using the design accelerator. And I'm going to start embellishing this shaft with things like a retaining ring. So in the first cylinder, we've got this little drop-down list which gives us the opportunity to add features, things like keyways, retaining rings, etc., etc. So what I'm going to add here is a retaining ring, or a groove for a retaining ring, I should say. And if we zoom in, you can see the preview shows us the position of that retaining ring. It's not quite right yet. If we have a look at this from a front-on view, you can hopefully see that that's kind of inboard, but I'd like it a little bit further inboard. So I can double-click this double-headed arrow. You can see that it's currently 0.7 of a millimeter inboard, but I'm going to change that to 1.5 and accept that. You hopefully saw that groove jump inboard. I'm also going to put a retaining ring on this last section here. So I'm going to select that last section, click that drop-down arrow as I did previously, and I'm going to add another retaining ring. Let's take a look. You can see, well, it's a little bit difficult to see, but the preview is showing us that retaining ring. Hopefully you can see it just here. There's that double arrow that we saw previously. So if I click on that double arrow, I'm going to change this offset to 12 millimeters. And that offset has moved that retaining ring groove. I'll just try and zoom in while we can still see that. So it's offset from this edge on the left. There it is there. I'm also going to add a keyway to this section. So again, I'm going to click on that little down arrow and I'm going to say add a keyway groove. And again, again we can see that that little preview. Hopefully we can see it. And I'm going to change the offset value to 38. So there's, yeah, it's a bit difficult to see. So once I've got those features previewed on shaft number 2, I'll click OK, and those features are added. You can see there's the keyway, there's the retaining ring groove at both ends. Next, excuse me, next I'm going to embellish shaft number 2 a bit further by adding things like chamfers and fillets to make the transition between these cylinders a little less kind of square. So again, I'm going to right click on shaft number 2 and edit using the design accelerator. I'm going to click the first edge feature and I'm going to add a chamfer. And the chamfer, much like the chamfer distance that the chamfer tool that you normally see in Inventor, gives us 3 options. I'm going to use the distance option and create a chamfer with 1 millimeter size. If we have a look at the preview, when I click on the tick, well, that'll just continue to add the preview here. Let's see. It's a bit difficult to see, but that's going to knock that corner off that shaft at that first position. I'm going to add a fillet for the first section of the 3rd cylinder, and that fillet is going to be a radius of 3. And I'm going to do a similar set of features for the long cylinder here, 63 by 30. I'm going to add a chamfer to the first edge of 1. And to the second edge. Of 1. I'm going to edit the next cylinder and I'm going to add a fillet where that radius is 3, and then the last cylinder and the last edge I'm going to add a chamfer, a value of 1. And okay that, let's take a look at that shaft. You can see the chamfer and then the fillet. I think I may have got that fillet the wrong way around. But that's not a problem. What I can do is I can edit shaft number 2 again using the design accelerator. And for that cylinder where there's a fillet, I'll change that back to no feature for the moment. I think I should have put the feature on the back edge. So we'll add a fillet here, a value of 3. OK that, and OK that. So that fillet there is much better. So we've got a chamfer there a fillet there, chamfer, chamfer fillet, and then a chamfer at the other end. The next thing to do is to add some spur gears to the design. So I'm going to use the spur gear calculator, and this displays this dialog box. If I can fit it in here, there we go. There's a lot of information in here, and we're just going to have a look at a couple of things just to make sure that the spur gears that we create are going to be the ones that work for this particular example. So we're going to select from the design guide. There's a couple of different methods to be able to select the way in which we're going to create these spur gears, but I'm going to use the module method. And if we look at the bottom here, there's a little expansion to this dialog box that is normally hidden by this double chevron button, where we can talk about input type, size type, etc. I'm not going to change anything in here just for ease. I'm going to close that back down. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look under gear 1, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to create the gears that I require as a feature on an already existing part. So when I select gear 1, I choose the feature mode, and I'm going to choose a cylindrical face. And it's going to be the large cylindrical face on cylinder 2. Next, I need to describe the planar work face, which is going to be perpendicular to the teeth. So I'm going to select on that tool to tell Inventor this is what I'm going to select next. And I'm going to select that side surface to that cylinder. And as you can see, Inventor is starting to show us a preview of what this gear is going to look like. So the next thing I need to do is to describe the gear that I'm going to create. This gear is going to have 29 teeth. The face width is going to be 30. And gear 1 has got a unit correction of 0. We're also going to make a pressure angle where the teeth are kind of angled on that gear. And we're also going to add a helix angle of 12. For the second gear, gear number 2, all we have to do here is to choose the component where we want this gear to exist. So this is going to be a new component that we're going to create that mates onto this shaft. So I'm going to select the component. I'm going to select this cylindrical face on shaft number 1. And again, I need to select the planar face in here. Let's zoom in a wee bit. This planar face. So if I take a look at this from a top and front perspective, you can see that those gears are aligned. So with the spur gear tool, there's a little calculate return at the bottom here that tells us that the calculation that we've described at the top here is in compliance. We can print this out to a notepad or something like that if you need to file it away somewhere. If we had described the spur gears in a way that wasn't in compliance, we would get warnings here telling us that it's not quite correct. So once I've got all of that organized, I can click on OK. And I'm going to accept the file naming to create these new features in this assembly. And as you can see, we've got shaft number 2, which has been populated with further features, the spur gear itself. We've also got a new component in the assembly. If I expand that down, it's this component here that is going to sit on shaft number 1. So once the spur gears have been created, we can start to have a look at transmission, how to add more components to make these spur gears move a little bit better. What I'd like to do is to add a key between this shaft and this spur gear. So if I, number 1, drag this object away, let's use the free move tool. Drag that object away, you can see that that spur gear doesn't have any accommodation for that shaft. So let's finish the free move tool and just pop that object back into place. Just for the moment, I'm going to make that object invisible by right-clicking on it and clicking visibility so that I can see the keyway that I wish to apply a key to. Let's zoom in a wee bit. Let's go back to the power transmission tools and click on the key tool. I'm going to accept the automatically selected key, and what I need to do is to select an existing shaft groove for this key to exist in. So I'm going to select that keyway that's already been cut, and then I have to select some other references for this key to exist. So I'm going to select the cylindrical reference and the planar face reference, which is just on the end here. And you can see if I zoom in a wee bit, there's the key previewed in the design. Oops. I don't need to generate a hub groove just at the moment. So I'm going to click on OK. And I'm going to accept the file naming to create that key in the assembly. So there's the key. Let's bring the visibility of the spur gear back by right-clicking on it and clicking on visibility. The next thing I need to do then is to edit this object to accommodate that shaft. So I'm going to double-click on the spur gear assembly, then I'm going to double-click on the spur gear itself. And what I'd like to do here is to create a sketch on this surface. So let's create a sketch on that surface. And what I'd like to be able to do is to project the geometry from the shaft through into that sketch. So I'm going to use the project tool, and I'm going to project the shaft out a diameter. It's a bit tricky to see as well, but you can see as I'm floating over the geometry that is the keyway, there's probably a better way to do this. But anyway, I'm going to project these items so that, well, there's the top of the keyway at least. What I can do here is I can just drop some sketched lines down from here and from here. And I want those two lines to be parallel, of course. Okay, and I'm going to use just some trim tools to tidy this up a wee bit. And there's my profile for cutting a shape through that spur gear. Let's finish the sketch and let's use the extrude tool. And the profiles I wish to extrude. And of course, instead of adding material, I wish to cut. And the cut is going to go through all. And OK that. And let's return to the top level assembly. And we should be able to observe there's that key kind of tucked in place there. like so. So here you can see the final assembly. I've gone ahead and I've added bearings and retaining clips for those retaining grooves. And if I go ahead and I drag one of these gears, you can see that the relationship between the two is working really nicely. So that's the completion of this this little demonstration. Hopefully it's been useful.